The evening sky over Dry Creek lay painted in bruised colors, violet spilling into rust, gold bleeding into shadow. Dust rose from the earth with every breath of wind, hanging in the light like a ghost of the day's labor. In that stillness, a man walked back into town. His boots struck the ground like measured thunder, slow and deliberate, as though he carried a burden too heavy for haste. Elias Boone was his name. He was broad the way mountains are broad, shoulders straining against a weathered coat, hands like shovels, face carved by years of sun and silence. Some said he was too big for the town, too big for a woman's arms, too big even for God to soften. But he walked with his eyes lowered, not with pride. He had long ago learned that his size, his shadow, unsettled people. Children hid behind their mothers when he passed. Men nodded stiffly, wary of provoking him. Elias Boone, too much, they whispered. Always too much. At Martha Higgins's inn that night, the fire snapped and the air buzzed with small talk. But it turned sharp when his name drifted across the room. Back again, is he? Martha's tongue curled the words like a whip. Lord help the fool girl who thinks she can handle a man that size. Break her in half, sure as a green stick. Laughter followed, mean and knowing. The sheriff sat at a corner table, boots propped, hat low, his voice like gravel dragged across wood. Boone don't belong with folks. A horse like that needs wide country, not tender company. Any woman takes him on, she'll pay for it. Elias heard it, though his back was to them. His jaw tightened. He had once tried to reach out, to touch warmth, to seek softness, but had been met with fear, rejection, sometimes cruelty. The memory clung like smoke, hard to wash off. He kept silent now, his only answer the slow draw of ale down his throat. Across the room, a woman's hand froze around her teacup. Clara Whitmore, the schoolteacher, had not meant to overhear. But she knew too well what it was to be weighed by whispers, to be found lacking by the measure of other people's tongues. Widowed at 28, she carried the scarlet shadow of pity and suspicion. Too young, they said, to lose a man. Too unlucky, they muttered, to keep one. Children adored her, but parents eyed her as if she carried some curse. When she heard Elias's name wrapped in ridicule, she felt a flicker inside. Something like kinship, something like recognition. Here was a man judged too large, too much. She was judged too little, too alone. And in that fragile sameness, a strange tenderness took root, though she dared not name it. The next day passed with the grit of survival. Clara's classroom filled with the scratch of chalk and the soft murmur of children's voices. She smiled through it, but her hands trembled when she erased the board. At dusk, the last child's footsteps faded, leaving her in the hollow quiet. Outside, she heard boots, the clang of a bucket, the distant call of men drinking hard. But none of it touched her. Her house, small and neat, waited like a tomb at the edge of town. Elias, too, bore his own solitude. He worked with horses in the far corral, hands steady on leather and steel, the animals unsettled, yet soothed by his presence. Men admired his strength, but trusted him no further than a shadow in the dark. And so his nights ended the same, alone in a bunkhouse, a lantern guttering low, silence pressing close as a blanket. It might have gone on that way, two souls circling each other in parallel loneliness, had fate not slipped one small trick of chance. One evening, Clara's book slipped from her arms as she crossed the dirt street. Pages fluttered like startled birds, scattering against boots and dust. She gasped, bent to gather them, then another shadow bent beside her. Large, heavy, yet trembling with care, Elias Boone's hand dwarfed the book he lifted. His fingers, rough and scarred, cradled it as though it were spun glass. He extended it toward her, his eyes refusing to rise above the dirt. Her breath caught. For the first time, she saw not the broad figure of town gossip, but a man afraid to be seen. She reached for the book, and in the brief moment their hands brushed, she felt the surprising gentleness in him, the kind of gentleness that does not come easy, but is learned by breaking and mending. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded, still not meeting her gaze, as though her eyes might undo him. The town saw, of course. The town always saw. Rumors swelled before the sun had set. Too big for her, they hissed. Too broken for him. Yet neither Clara nor Elias pulled away. Days passed, and with them came quiet gestures. Clara found her schoolhouse fence mended one morning, nails driven true, wood smooth beneath her palm. She looked up and caught sight of Elias across the street, hammer still in his hand, pretending not to notice her gratitude. She answered in kind. A small bundle of biscuits left on the schoolhouse steps, wrapped in cloth. Elias found them, lifted them in his hand, and for the first time in years, allowed himself a smile, faint and quick as dawn. It became a language without words. Nails hammered, food shared, nods passed at a distance. Slowly, without the town's consent, a thread wove itself between them. But gossip is a hungry beast, and it does not sleep. Sheriff Graves found Clara outside the schoolhouse one morning, his shadow long across her doorstep. "You don't know what you're inviting, Miss Whitmore," he warned, voice heavy. "That man will break you. Not on purpose, maybe, but he don't know his own strength. He don't belong with tender things." Clara lifted her chin, though her heart shook. "I decide what I belong to, Sheriff," the words cost her. All day whispers followed her like burrs. Martha Higgins's voice rose above the rest. Poor widows desperate enough to take a giant. Shameful. Clara walked home with heat in her face, but inside, a different flame burned. She remembered Elias's hand returning her book, trembling not from menace but from fear. She remembered the care in his silence, the steadiness of his work, and she began to see the truth. Sometimes the world fears what it does not understand, and calls it dangerous. That night, under the slow spill of stars, Clara found him by the corral. He was leaning on the fence, hat pulled low, the horses shifting soft in the dark. She stood close, heart battering her ribs. "They say you're too big," she said quietly. Elias stiffened. He had heard it all before. He opened his mouth, rough with shame. "Too big, too much. That's all I ever been." Clara reached, her hand brushing his sleeve. "Then take your time," she whispered. "Fill me slowly, so I never forget you." Silence stretched. The night air was thick with dust and starlight, the kind of silence where the whole world waits to see if two souls will move closer or retreat. Elias looked down at her, his size dwarfing hers, fear and hope warring in his chest. Slowly, cautiously, as though he might crush her, he reached for her hand. His fingers shook. He expected her to pull away, but she tightened her grip instead, grounding him, steadying him. For the first time, he let himself believe he was not too much. When they walked back into town, side by side, the saloon doors stilled, conversations faltered. Gossip buzzed like hornets, but no one dared speak above a whisper. For once, neither Clara nor Elias flinched. They carried themselves with the quiet dignity of two people who had nothing left to prove. And the town, confronted with that dignity, fell silent. Years later, old voices would retell it differently. Some would say it was scandalous, others would claim it was inevitable. But those who watched closely knew the truth, that strength and tenderness, bound together, are unbreakable. And if you, dear soul, carry the weight of being too much or not enough in a world quick to judge, remember their story. Remember that the whispers fade. What endures is the hand that holds yours steady, the one that tells you to take your time and stay slowly forever.